Hey guys, tonight we stroll barefoot through the quiet shadows of the Khmer Empire. You're not in a modern city or even in a dusty museum filled with plaques and glass cases. You're under a canopy of stars in the heart of ancient Cambodia, somewhere between sleep and memory. The air is heavy with heat, but there's a coolness near the ground, a kind of earthy balm that rises from the moss-covered stones. You hear it before you see it. Angkor Thom, once home to over 1 million souls, now hushed by time. Crickets trill like tiny drums. A bat swoops low, its leathery wings almost brushing your shoulder. You flinch, but only a little. It's fine. You probably won't survive this anyway, not because of danger, but because the food smells might knock you unconscious with longing. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love reading those. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your journey along one of the raised laterite causeways leading into the southern gate of Angkor Thom. The bridge is flanked by stone gods and demons gripping a serpent in a cosmic tug-of-war, but you're more interested in what smells are drifting across the moat. Something nutty, maybe roasted rice, a tangle of sour herbs. Under your feet, the road is worn smooth by centuries of bare feet. Once, ox carts and sandalwood palanquins rolled across this very stone. You imagine the muffled clink of bronze serving dishes, because where there are kings and temples, there were snacks. The first thing you smell is lemongrass, unmistakable even when your eyes are closed. Lemongrass and something toasted, like sesame or coconut husk. You duck under a low tree branch, and for a moment you feel like you're sneaking back into history, tiptoeing into the dinner hour of a kingdom that shouldn't remember your name. There are no food stalls now, but you can see them if you squint hard enough. Women in indigo sarongs crouch by clay stoves. Children carry baskets of unripe mango. Someone yells, probably about fish prices, and then laughs. You hear bronze bells jingling from an ox's neck. A historian might tell you that Angkor Thom peaked in the 12th century, that it had gridded streets, reservoirs, and a city centre more sprawling than medieval Paris. But what they might forget to mention is how it would have smelled at night. Tamarind, lime, smoked fish, sweat, wet stone, and the ever-present sizzle of rice cracking in hot oil. You pass a low stone wall that once bordered the royal road. A gecko chirps from the cracks. And then, there it is again, that puff of lemongrass wind drifting past a collapsed vendor stall. Someone once made night snacks here. It's just a pile of rotten wood now, swallowed by vines, but in your mind's eye you see rice cakes stacked in banana leaf, maybe sprinkled with crushed palm sugar. Here's your mainstream historical fact. For tonight, Khmer cuisine was incredibly diverse for its time, thanks to rich river systems, trade routes, and proximity to both the sea and jungle. And now your fringe fact. Archaeologists recently discovered residue of what appears to be a fermented honey and leaf paste, possibly used as a condiment or glaze in broken clay vessels near the Bayonne temple. No recipe? No label, just a sticky mystery from 1,000 years ago. Historians still argue whether Khmer cuisine was truly unique or more of a grand mashup of regional flavors borrowed from India, China, and indigenous Southeast Asian traditions. The truth is somewhere between a curry and a sour fish stew. And the Khmer made it their own. You duck behind a banyan tree where the roots crawl like snakes over fallen masonry. There's a glimmer on the moss, maybe just dew, but maybe oil, from a pot long overturned. You crouch, press your hand to the cool ground, and imagine being one of the royal cooks at dusk. Not a queen, not a priest, just a very sweaty person holding a mortar and pestle, pounding galangal into submission before the princess notices dinner is late. Back then you might have used a bellows to fan the flames. Rice might already be soaking. A bamboo skewer of river prawn sizzles nearby, dusted with crushed pepper leaves and sea salt. This isn't street food, this is royal leftovers, and you know what? They're amazing. You pass what might have been a communal well. It's dry now, filled with ferns and the ghost of someone's laundry basket. But people once filled clay jars here, maybe mixed a little ginger water to drink before sleep. You could do with that right now, honestly. As you continue into the heart of the city, the towering faces of the Bayon loom above. Each one smiles knowingly, as if they too remember the flavor of a lost snack, of pickled fish, rind, pressed into rice balls and wrapped in lotus petal. It's the kind of thing you'd never put on a modern menu, but here, it was magic. And just when you think it can't get any weirder, you spot something peeking out from under a bush, an old rice paddle, half buried, blackened with age. Maybe it's just a stick. Or maybe it's a relic from the golden kitchen of Jayavarman VII himself. The man loved infrastructure, but surely he loved snacks too. The crickets grow louder. You stop by a broken column, sit and breathe. Above, the moon drifts behind a smoky cloud. There are no modern lights here, just fireflies, the scent of half-remembered herbs, and the ancient hunger of a civilization that once ruled half a continent. You yawn. Not because you're bored, but because this world is so distant, so dreamlike, that your body is beginning to slow. Your thoughts are sinking into soft moss, warm rice, and the flicker of memory you never lived. You stretch your legs and start walking again, careful not to trip over the exposed root of a strangler fig that's wrapped itself tightly around the skeleton of a temple wall. That root is like history itself, quiet, patient, and endlessly hungry for stone. As you pass into a clearing, the smell hits you like a nostalgic whisper, smoky, sweet, and strangely savory. You can almost taste it on the back of your tongue. You follow the scent instinctively like a cat drawn to the sound of opening tuna. Around you, the jungle hushes as if it too is remembering. You're standing in what was once a market square near Tarprom, long before Angelina Jolie made it a postcard. This was a hub of trade, chatter, and clanging pots. Now, only termites and vines do business here. But listen closely, really closely, and you might hear the faintest echo of a knife rhythmically tapping against wood. There's a soft crunch beneath your foot. You look down and spot something curious, a shard of pottery with faint scratches that almost look like writing, or maybe a recipe? Probably just lines from someone absent-mindedly doodling while waiting for their rice to cook. Still, you imagine a grandmother sitting cross-legged, carving notes on her preferred jackfruit marinade as her grandchildren swatted away mosquitoes. Here's your mainstream fact of the hour. The Khmer Empire thrived on a system of advanced water management. Canals, reservoirs, and moats weren't just defensive or agricultural. They also supported vast marketplaces by stabilizing trade routes and food supply. And the fringe tidbit, evidence suggests the ancient Khmer dried river shrimp into a powdery substance and mixed it with crushed tamarind seeds to create a sour, salty paste. No one knows its exact use. Some think it was a snack dip. Others suspect it was medicinal, maybe both. Khmer cuisine was nothing if not resourceful. Historians still argue whether these food practices were preserved orally or if there existed a now-lost Khmer culinary script, possibly destroyed in later invasions or swallowed by time and tropical
rot. You take a seat on the remnants of a stone platform, brushing away a layer of leaf litter.
You imagine this was once a raised vendor stall, maybe one dedicated entirely to sweet things. Sticky rice coloured with butterfly pea flour, candied banana strips, and something called num ansam, a log-shaped rice cake filled with mung bean, and pork fat, wrapped tight in banana leaves, steamed for hours. You bite into the imaginary version, and your sleepy brain immediately invents the texture: dense, warm, salty, sweet. You chew thoughtfully, even though there's nothing in your
mouth but midnight air and perhaps a passing mosquito. Then a nearby tree rustles.
You pause, eyes wide, wondering if a civet cat or a fruit bat is about to drop in for dinner. But no, just the wind, teasing the leaves like a playful whisper. Still, it feels like someone or something is watching. Maybe it's just the carved face of a long-forgotten king smiling from a mossy temple corner. You get up and drift toward the faint sound of water. There's a beret, an ancient reservoir just ahead, its banks now overgrown with papyrus and wild lotus. At its peak, this artificial lake held enough water to supply crops, homes, and probably even help rinse a few hundred dinner bowls. You imagine young kitchen assistants trudging here with ceramic jugs, splashing and gossiping, accidentally dropping a spoon or two into the reeds. Somewhere down there, a 900-year-old ladle probably still waits. At the water's edge, you pick up a pebble and skip it. Once, twice, then plunk. Not bad for someone in sandals. Nearby, you notice what could have been a cooking pit, blackened.
Earth, half-buried stones. Was this a communal grill, a fish-smoking station, or just a forgotten picnic spot for the royal gardeners? You crouch and tap one of the stones. It echoes dully. You swear it smells faintly of charred tamarind wood.
Your stomach rumbles, but it's more out of curiosity than hunger. You want to know what they knew. You want to taste what they once tasted. At this point, you spot a fig tree with wide leaves and low branches. Dangling from one limb is a woven reed basket, probably modern, probably left by a park worker. But in your dream haze, it's full of ancient snacks, flat cakes made from pounded rice and wild honey, palm sugar toffee with chili threads, charred frog legs if you're brave enough. You are. A bat flutters low again, as if reminding you to keep moving. You thank it silently, nod once like a polite dinner guest, and carry on. Past the tree line, you find a stretch of cobbled street, the stones uneven and worn. You can almost hear the clack of wooden sandals, the rustle of silk robes, the dull jingle of silver bangles from a lady of the court out buying coconut jelly. And there, beside a wall of lichen-covered stone, you see an engraving, not a majestic bas-relief, but a tiny etching. A rice bowl maybe, or a fish. No official story here, just some graffiti from a food-loving ancient artisan who wanted to leave his snack legacy carved in stone. You smile. You do the same. By now, the night
has deepened. The air thickens with mist and you can barely see the path ahead.
But your feet find the way, guided not by sight, but by scent, memory, and that strange but comforting hunger that only ancient food can spark. There's a reason we remember meals more than monuments. Meals are fleeting. They vanish as soon as they appear, like dreams or fireflies or empires. You pause under a tamarind tree and close your eyes. Somewhere out there, someone is roasting something. You can't prove it, but you feel it. The sky above is soft charcoal now, and the jungle breathes in a slower rhythm, like it too is starting to fall asleep. You follow a mossy trail leading through what used to be a residential quarter. At least that's what archaeologists guess, based on foundation stones and drainage channels. But you're on the scent of something sweeter. Somewhere nearby, someone was once baking. You spot a fallen slab of sandstone, half buried beneath vines. On its face is a grid of evenly spaced indentations like a tray mold. Was this part of an ancient oven system, or just a pattern in the stone? Historians still argue whether the Khmer used raised clay stoves or dug-out hearths for their daily cooking. What they do agree on is that heat, smoke, and steam were essential to nearly every recipe. The Khmer were masters of fire control, especially in preparing num kong, donut-shaped rice cakes fried in shallow brass pans until they formed a crisp crust, then soaked in palm sugar syrup. You imagine crouching beside a hearth, the scent of toasted rice flour and bubbling caramel winding through the air like a snake made of dessert. Your eyes scan the ground and catch sight of a cluster of round, sunken pits. Tandoor-like ovens, possibly, but one pit contains tiny charred seeds, too uniform to be random. You crouch and pick one up. It could be ancient sesame, maybe even amaranth, and suddenly you're imagining a sesame honey wafer pressed flat between hot stones and served to royal scribes needing a sugar kick before another night of temple inscription. Fringe theory time. One group of food historians, yes, that's a thing, believes the Khmer Empire had a specialized culinary guild just for desserts. These weren't just kitchen workers, but spiritual practitioners of sweetness. Their job was to offer harmony to both the palate and the cosmos. Think of them as ancient dessert monks. You take a slow step forward and your foot lands in a shallow trench. A forgotten kitchen drain, maybe. You chuckle. Even 900 years ago, someone had to clean up the mess. To your left is a crumbling wall etched with rows of elephants. But hidden between two tusks is something different, a faint diagram like a recipe. There's no writing, just a sequence of ingredients represented by symbols, a leaf, a circle, a droplet. Could be spices, could be instructions, or maybe just doodles by a cook with big dreams and a dull shift. You pass beneath a canopy of palm trees, their trunks leaning like sleepy
gods.
Above you, a flying squirrel drifts from branch to branch with all the grace of a pastry on a zip line. You wave, hello. It doesn't wave back. Rude. Now you're entering what once was a royal garden. You can tell by the ordered rows of raised earthbeds and irrigation ditches that cut through like veins. The Khmer grew sugarcane, lemongrass, pandan leaves, and ginger, a true pantry without walls. Mainstream fact: Khmer cooks often infused rice with pandan and banana leaf oils for color and fragrance, culinary aromatherapy, long before it became a spa gimmick. As you wander through the ghostly greenhouse, you spot something that feels more like a dream than a fact. A low, round table ringed with termite-munched stools. A communal snack circle. You picture families sitting here, dipping sticky rice balls into a warm sauce made from coconut milk, salt, and toasted sesame. The crackle of laughter mixing with the slurp of satisfaction. And over there, behind a collapsed brick wall, lies a row of shallow dishes. Stone, maybe soapstone. Each one has grooves worn into its surface. You run your fingers over them. These might have been for grinding spices or maybe for shaping rice dumplings by hand. There's no label, no property of royal chef stamp, but the ghost of their Purpose hums in your palm. Suddenly a firefly blinks near your face, then another, then 10. They hover like glowing breadcrumbs leading you deeper into the ruins. You follow, arms loose, feet whispering across damp earth. The fireflies lead you to a strange sight, a still pool, smooth as obsidian, hidden within a ring of sandstone pillars, maybe a reflection pond, maybe a forgotten cooking pit that flooded during monsoon season and decided to stay a lake. You kneel beside it and see your face distorted by starlight and ripples. But beside your reflection, something else, a shape, round and flat, floating just beneath the surface. Your pulse jumps, a plate, a bowl, an ancient snack, preserved perfectly like a ghost in gelatin. Nope, just a lily pad. The jungle's prankster strikes again. Still, the moment is perfect. You close your eyes and imagine tasting something real from this place, not just reading about it, not just dreaming it, but actually biting into a piece of Khmer rice cracker, crispy, airy, drizzled with palm sugar caramel and dotted with roasted mung beans. You chew in your mind. It's crunchy, slightly nutty, with that unmistakable smokiness from being dried over embers. You lean back against a pillar, the stone surprisingly warm from the day's leftover sun. Around you, the fireflies start to drift upward, spiraling like lazy sparks, and you remember something funny. Crocodile dung was used as sunscreen in some ancient traditions. Not Khmer, thankfully, but still. You mentally thank the Empire for sticking to rice and turmeric. A breeze passes, leaves flutter, and just when you think you're drifting too deep into sleep, a monkey screams somewhere far off. You blink, shake your head, then chuckle. Even in a lost empire, you can't escape snack thieves. One last thought as you stretch your legs and stand again. Scholars still debate whether Khmer street food culture existed in the same way modern Southeast Asian markets do, with stalls and hawkers and competing aromas. There's evidence for it, but like most things in history, we're left with fragments, flavors, and firefly-guided dreams. So you keep walking. And the path ahead? It smells like ginger. You step over a low wall, its bricks furred with moss like the back of some sleepy forest creature. In front of you unfolds a space that feels oddly organized. Not formal, not temple-like, but communal, open, and just irregular enough to be natural, until you notice the smoothed stones in a circular arrangement. You're standing in what might have been a village snack court. Well, technically an open-air gathering space, but let's be real, people probably didn't sit here in silence pondering metaphysics. Someone brought sweets. Someone always brings sweets. Around you are outlines of long-gone bamboo huts, their stilts leaving small, round impressions in the earth. Archaeologists have found charred rice clumps and broken ceramic strainers in spots like this, traces of steamed dumplings, palm cakes, and sticky rice rolled into little herbal packets. Think of them as ancient food trucks without the wheels. Rizkin, Khmer had access to sago palm and banana flour, wild jackfruit and taro. But it's the tiny things, the sesame, the tamarind, the wild ginger, that made their snacks come alive. You imagine a vendor, barefoot, laughing, swatting flies, flipping thin golden crepes filled with grated coconut and sugar over a curved terracotta pan. Fringe theory time again. Some researchers believe the Khmer had portable clay ovens, not unlike modern Vietnamese ban cot pans. The idea? Mini snacks for mini occasions, festival days, rice harvests, or just Tuesdays. You squat beside a pile of fire-reddened stones and touch the center. Warm. Of course not from heat. It's just your imagination playing tricks, but Still your brain insists. There's something powerful about standing in a place where joy once sizzled. A short walk ahead you find a row of small depressions in the ground, too orderly to be natural. Ancient food stalls, or perhaps rainwater basins? Historians still argue whether such ground formations were culinary workspaces or ritual wash areas, but either way, someone spent time here. Possibly a grandmother figure, doling out honeyed rice cakes with a wooden spatula worn smooth from love and repetition. Your feet crunch through brittle leaves. The sun has long disappeared, but a moody glow comes from the moon, hanging there, like a ripe, undecided mango. You find a bench-shaped rock and sit. Behind you, the trees sigh. And as you exhale, a memory you never lived drifts into your mind. A child running, his sticky fingers holding something brown and steaming, perhaps a baked banana wrapped in palm leaf. He's laughing, calling to his sister, who's just swiped. The last skewer of grilled coconut pancake. Mainstream fact: the Khmer Empire used lotus seeds in both sacred offerings and desserts. Dried, roasted, or ground into flour, lotus was considered not just delicious but symbolic. Purity from the mud. That's not metaphor, that's breakfast. You rise and trace a pathway of flat stones leading through an old irrigation channel. The jungle is quieter now, not silent, just waiting. Like even the insects are on pause, unsure whether you're a dream or a returning ghost. At the next clearing, you nearly stumble over a log, but it's not a log. It's an old, overturned rice storage jar, split in two like a clay watermelon. You peer inside, just dirt and the occasional brave fern. But it makes you think about preservation, fermentation, pickling. The Khmer, like most tropical civilizations, had to get creative with storage. Fermented rice cakes, sour, chewy, addictive. Pickled mangoes, cut thin, salted, stored in clay. Pots. Some dishes were pungent, almost aggressive, but paired with sticky palm sugar syrup, they hit that perfect sweet-sour kick. You imagine biting into one and immediately needing a nap. The good kind, the I just ate history kind. A shadow moves across the ruins, a bat, flitting between the canopy and stars. You wave, the bat declines to comment. You walk past what looks like the faint remains of a grinding station, smooth rock with worn ruts, and next to it, an upturned basin possibly used to mix rice flour. One local legend passed down among nearby villagers claims that a royal cook once created a rice batter so light it could float on water. Not very plausible, but you appreciate the ambition. Historians, for the record, remain unconvinced. Further ahead, a tree root curls around a broken statue. Not a god, just a simple farmer, or maybe a merchant. He holds a basket. What's inside? You squint. Grapes? No, probably palm fruit. Or symbolic dumplings, you like that better? Symbolic dumplings, full of hope, wrapped in banana leaves, served with the whisper of a smile. In the fading moonlight, the path turns squishy. You're entering a wet patch, maybe the old fish ponds. The Khmer were expert aquaculturists, building canal systems that doubled as snack sources: catfish, tilapia, prawns, all simmered into stews or flash-fried with lemongrass and green peppercorn. You pause. Do fish qualify as snacks? Depends on the size and your hunger, but when paired with rice crackers, definitely. Imagine a snack boat drifting through the moat of Angkor Wat, steam rising, tourists chewing thoughtfully. Except in this case, the tourists wore linen loincloths and worshipped Vishnu. Mainstream fact: in Khmer inscriptions, there are references to offerings of sweet meat and floured rice. These weren't metaphors, they were banquet descriptions. The empire's elites weren't shy about snacking well. At the edge of the pond, you find a carved stone with faint patterns, spirals mostly. Maybe a sacred symbol, maybe just a baker's doodle. The fringe theory here? Some scholars suggest food prep areas doubled as places of spiritual cleansing. Cooking wasn't just practical, it was cosmic. You weren't just boiling rice. You were aligning your karma. You sit again, feet dangling in the cool mud. The breeze brings you a whiff of pandan, which is impressive since no actual pandan is around. But your mind fills in the blanks. The way it does when you're half asleep, half exploring, half hoping the ancient world still remembers your name. You follow a thin, root-laced path bordered by ferns that brush your ankles like ghostly fingertips. The night deepens and the moon filters through dense leaves in tangled lattices of silver. Your steps are slow now, not out of caution, but reverence. You've reached what feels like a sacred place, though not the sort you'd expect statues or incense. No, this space smells like roasted grains and something faintly sweet, like burnt sugar stuck to the bottom of a bronze pot. You've arrived at what was once a communal granary. Think of it as the ancient Khmer pantry, but one big enough to feed an army. Or at least a very ambitious snack festival. The ground here is elevated slightly, built atop stone slabs to keep out moisture. Clever, right? Elevation meant preservation. It also meant that pests, like mice, monkeys, or hungry cousins, had to work harder to sneak a bite. Mainstream fact, Khmer granaries were often built near temples or reservoirs, reflecting the intertwined roles of food, religion, and water. Engineering. You weren't just storing rice, you were preserving cosmic harmony. Also breakfast. As you walk the perimeter, your eyes adjust to the outline of low walls and charred remnants of wooden beams. This structure might have once held 100 woven baskets, each sealed with waxy palm leaves, each packed with something precious. Rice, of course, but also mung beans, roasted sesame, dried taro chips, palm sugar tablets. Staples, yes, but also snack ingredients. Imagine a festival preparation scene. Baskets are opened with ceremonial gestures, their contents carefully weighed on balance scales made of bronze and teak. A cook, wrinkled, barefoot, slightly terrifying, scolds a younger apprentice for dropping a palm sugar lump into the pond. The kid shrugs. The fish enjoy it. The lesson, as always, waste not. You notice a strange item in the mud, a hollowed wooden trough, half sunk, full of rainwater. This might have been a pounding station, not for making flour this time, but candy. Khmer sweets sometimes involved grinding sticky rice into a smooth paste, mixing it with coconut cream, then pressing it into shapes, little moons, coiled dragons. A few were flavored with pandan, others dyed pink using betel leaves. You resist the urge to taste the muddy puddle and instead imagine the original dish, warm, gooey, fragrant, and slightly chewy. The perfect just one more snack. Fringe tidbit. There's a theory that some of these candy molds were shaped after constellations, part food, part astronomy lesson. Historians are divided. Some say that's romanticizing. Others point to carvings showing star charts next to snack trays. Either way, it's delightfully weird. Further in, you pass a trio of stone bowls arranged in a triangle. Water collection? Maybe. But they seem too deliberate, too decorative. One holds what looks like blackened lichen. Another? Ant trails. The third is empty except for a single cracked seed. It hums with story. Scholars still argue whether such bowls were part of food rituals or simply tools for sorting grains. But local lore shared in quiet voices under starlit roofs speaks of listening bowls used by priestesses to ask the gods for good harvests. The trick? Drop a specific seed into the bowl and listen for the echo. A high ping meant surplus.
A dull thud. Better double your planting. You smile at how food, even in ancient times, needed permission from the skies. Nearby, a circle of smooth stones surrounds a fire pit. You sit at the edge. Maybe 1,000 years ago, children gathered.
Here after chores, their hands sticky with roasted honey yams. An elder might have stirred a bubbling pot of palm nectar, telling stories of crocodile spirits and rain dragons. And someone, probably the mischievous uncle, snuck in fermented rice balls spiked with local fruit wine. They laughed too loud. Someone shushed them. Everyone secretly wanted more. You look up. The stars are brighter now, or maybe your eyes are just wide enough to catch them. They glimmer through the gaps in the canopy like grains of popped rice scattered across obsidian silk. You trace your fingers along a nearby log. No, not a log. A fallen beam carved with repeating diamond shapes, possibly a symbol of fertility, or protection, or maybe just really enthusiastic carpentry. What's interesting is that the beam's end is charred. Controlled burn, kitchen accident, or a snack trial gone terribly wrong. Historians might never agree, which is fine. Not all mysteries demand solutions. You stand and follow a new trail, narrow and half swallowed by undergrowth. A drizzle begins, soft, refreshing, barely enough to cool your cheeks. The earth smells rich now, damp rice fields, warm clay, a hint
of lemongrass. You pass what might be the ruins of a market stall, fragments of terracotta jars, one still etched with a lotus petal pattern. You imagine it once held pickled starfruit.
Sharp, sweet, and capable of waking up even the sleepiest temple guard. Mainstream detail again, starfruit and tamarind were common in ancient Khmer diets, often combined with honey or dried fish to create bold, complex flavors. Khmer cooks weren't shy. They played with contrasts, sweet and bitter, soft and crispy, sacred and indulgent, like if Gordon Ramsay wore a flower garland and spoke in riddles. You reach a small clearing where the moonlight reveals a surprise, tiny footprints preserved in hardened mud. Probably a child, barefoot, skipping between errands. You picture her carrying a snack bundle, wrapped in banana leaf, tied with a thin vine, probably still warm. Her route, from the fire pit to the granary and back again, delivering treats with the solemn importance only kids can carry. The path narrows into a tunnel of hanging vines. One brushes your shoulder and leaves a sticky sap behind. You sniff. Sweet. Almost caramel-like. Jungle candy? Maybe. Or a reminder that nature is always cooking, whether we notice or not. A breeze carries a faint rhythm. Drums. No, just your heartbeat, echoing in time with the ruins. You step carefully, already missing this space before you've left it. Behind you, something rustles. You turn. Just a monkey, stealing your imaginary rice cake. You walk a little slower now, as if your body senses the weight of time thickening with each step. The forest hums around you, crickets gossiping, leaves whispering secrets overhead. You duck under a moss-covered archway that probably hasn't seen a festival in centuries. On the other side, you're greeted by the faint shape of what was once a bustling kitchen compound. Yes, an actual royal kitchen Khmer style. The first thing that hits you is the scent, not real of course, but your brain conjures it anyway. Wood smoke clinging to roasted banana leaf, tangy bursts of fermented fish sauce, coconut milk simmering in a clay pot till it sings. The ghosts of flavor tap gently at your nose. Here, stone outlines suggest a series of counters or prep tables, but they're low, much too low to stand at, because Khmer cooks traditionally worked while squatting or kneeling. Think yoga class meets Iron Chef with extra humidity and way fewer ergonomic benefits. Mainstream historians agree that palace kitchens were highly organized, almost militaristic in rhythm. Teams of cooks specialized in everything from rice steaming to fish stuffing. One section might have been devoted entirely to snacks and desserts, a whole crew dedicated to perfecting sesame brittle, sticky coconut rolls, and these fascinating little dumplings wrapped in fig leaves, which, frustratingly, nobody's recreated successfully. Now you notice the earthen ovens, dome-shaped, patched with ancient clay, just tall enough for a medium-sized cauldron. One still has scorch marks. You imagine it, a pot bubbling over with palm sugar and minced jackfruit stirred with a bamboo paddle by a cook humming under their breath. Overhead, spices dry on woven mats, lemongrass, turmeric, wild ginger, maybe even long pepper, which has a sharper bite than its modern cousin. Historians still argue whether long pepper was used for royal meals or medicinal broths. Either way, it probably ended up in something delicious. To your right, a series of stone holes in the ground. Don't panic, they're not spooky. They were likely storage pits for ceramic jars. These might have contained fermented ingredients, shrimp paste, pickled eggplant, tamarind jam, or even wild honey laced with pandan. Local law says that during the New Year's feast, these jars were ceremonially opened, and the scent alone could bring tears to your eyes. Happy ones, mostly. Fringe fact coming at you. Some scholars believe certain Khmer desserts were used as omens. If your banana pudding split down the middle during steaming, it was a bad sign for the harvest. But if it puffed into a perfect dome, prosperity all year. So yes, your snack could literally determine the fate of your village. No pressure, right? You step over a broken pestle, the kind used to crush roasted peanuts into paste. A few feet away, a groove in the stone marks the rhythm of decades of pounding. The culinary drumbeat of a kingdom, and then, what's that? Just beyond the ovens, a long bench carved directly from limestone, smoothed down by centuries of use. This, they say, was the snack testing bench. Well, not officially, but local guides will wink and tell you it's where the head cook sat to judge which desserts made the royal cut. Too dry, toss it. Too sticky, fix it just right. Serve it with gold leaf garnish. It's here you sit, letting the imagined weight of ancient responsibility settle onto your shoulders. You can almost hear a cook nervously offering their latest creation, a dumpling filled with crushed lotus seed and coconut ash. The head cook takes a bite, nods slightly, says nothing, and the apprentice sighs in relief. The kingdom is safe for another day. Scholars debate whether such formality was real or exaggerated, but Khmer inscriptions do mention strict hierarchies within kitchen staff, especially in palatial settings. One misstep could mean reassignment to rice-washing duty, or worse, flavor-blind testing of over-fermented tamarind paste. Your eyes, follow a trail of broken ceramic shards, each one delicately painted, possibly part of a serving platter. You picture a dish of sticky rice topped with crushed cashew and candied mango, offered to the king with two hands, eyes lowered, heart
Pounding.
This wasn't just food, this was art, politics, magic. The trees rustle above, and a gust of wind stirs fallen leaves across your path. They whisper names you'll never pronounce correctly, recipes no one remembers fully. Somewhere in this kitchen, a grandmother once whispered her dessert secrets to a granddaughter. One quick, breathless sentence between stirring and folding. That sentence is lost now. Or maybe not. Maybe it's hiding in a poem carved into the wall of a temple nearby, disguised as a prayer. Fringe theory alert. A few obsessive food archaeologists think there's a correlation between certain Khmer hymns and cooking instructions. One verse might describe how to sweeten water with banana blossom. Another could be outlining a method to dry taro slices into crisp, airy wafers. No one's confirmed it, but it's oddly plausible. You shift your weight and notice something odd. A tiny stone-lined channel running from the ovens toward the outer wall. A drainage system? Possibly. But its shape suggests something more ritualistic. Some believe these channels carried scented water, infused with jasmine or citrus peel, to cleanse tools or purify the air. A kind of ancient aromatherapy mixed with sanitation. Two birds, one coconut. You rise, brushing imaginary flour off your hands, and exit the kitchen compound. The moonlight follows you, casting your shadow across moss and memory. You don't look back, but you hear it. The soft, clinker pottery, a wooden ladle tapping against iron, a child laughing as they sneak a syrup-covered rice cake before dinner. You walk on deeper into the ruins of a civilization that cooked with care, measured joy in spoonfuls, and treated dessert like a diplomatic
mission. And you start to wonder how many of these flavors, these stories, are truly lost? Or are they waiting for someone like you, wandering by moonlight, to find them again?
The path under your feet grows softer now, no longer packed earth, but a fine dust that clings to your sandals like powdered sugar. You follow it through a narrow corridor of ancient stone, once a service route connecting kitchens to the outer, festival grounds. The air is thick with imagined aroma, roasted grains, smouldering charcoal, the sugary tang of slow-cooked jackfruit. You exhale slowly. This is where the real fun happened. Ahead lies a broad, cleared space, surrounded by low walls and vine-draped columns. You've arrived at what scholars believe was one of the Khmer Empire's travelling food courts. No, not the kind in a mall with plastic trays and soda machines. This was a mobile, modular dining experience brought to you by temple festivals, royal processions, and, according to some theories, competitive snack makers trying to win favour. Imagine it. Rows of woven mats, each home to a family or guild, showing off their specialty. Over here, a sticky rice cake grilled in banana leaf. Over there, a fritter made with wild yam and fermented palm sap. Someone passes you a tiny cup of spiced lotus root tea, and even in your sleepy dream state you raise an eyebrow. That's surprisingly good. Historians still argue whether these food gatherings were regular cultural fixtures or limited to big annual festivals like the Khmer New Year or royal birthday celebrations. What we know is that some communities became famous for a single dish, and if you were lucky enough to attend, you'd get to taste dozens of regional variations in one evening. Think of it as a very ancient, very barefoot version of street food night. One popular treat? A chewy snack made from grated coconut sugar and roasted mung beans, all rolled into little balls and dusted with something scholars can't quite identify. Possibly powdered lotus stem, or finely crushed rice husk. The jury's still out, and no, you probably won't survive trying to replicate it at home. You pass a low stone table with 6 shallow depressions, once used perhaps for displaying or sampling different dipping sauces. Khmer snacks, you see, were rarely eaten plain. Everything had a sauce, a powder, or a drizzle. Tamarind paste with honey, fish sauce infused with wild lime, even fermented crab water for the truly adventurous. Go ahead, dip your imaginary rice
Cracker into that last one. Oh, wait, there's an open pavilion to your left now. Well, more like what's left of one. 4 columns and a flat stone floor. But archaeologists believe this was a judging booth. Yes, a literal snack competition stage.
During festivals, it's said that the best makers presented their creations here before a panel of monks, nobles, and one particularly picky royal taster who apparently hated anything with too much pandan. Tragic. You kneel down near a fire pit, long cold. Nearby are blackened stones arranged in a circle, possibly an old grill site. Here, someone might have roasted sticky rice in bamboo tubes, a technique that survives today in some parts of Cambodia and Laos. The heat caramelizes the sugars, and when the bamboo is peeled open, the rice is infused with woodsy sweetness. Word on the ancient street was, if your tube split open too early, you had to start over. No pressure, right? Fringe theory moment. Some say certain snacks had spiritual functions, a kind of edible offering with protective properties. There's talk of ghost dumplings made only during eclipses, filled with black sesame and hidden in banana leaves, left at forest shrines, to ward off misfortune. Historians aren't sure if these were actually eaten or just used ritually, but either way their recipes are lost, or perhaps too sacred to repeat. You wander over to what looks like a collapsed store, a simple rectangle of stone with char marks and a half-buried wooden beam. Was this where someone sold candied mango slices or crispy fried crickets? Probably. Bugs were, and still are, considered crunchy, savory delights in many Southeast Asian cuisines, and don't scoff. With the right spice rub, they're a solid 8 out of 10, slightly nutty, perfectly crisp, plus low carb. Paleo Khmer? Anyone? Overhead, the stars shift slightly, glittering like sugar crystals on a blackened cookie sheet. Somewhere out there, a comet might be blazing, a sign of luck or doom depending on which cook you asked. Snack makers in the Khmer Empire, especially those tied to temples, took celestial events seriously. Some even adjusted their recipes based on lunar cycles. Certain fillings were reserved only for full moons. Others were considered bad luck unless made on a Tuesday.
No, seriously, Tuesday. At the far end of the courtyard, you come upon a cracked stone board, etched with a faint grid, a game, perhaps. But fringe researchers think it might have been used for organizing ingredients, each square labeled with a food item or spice.
One legend tells of a chef who used this grid to create perfect flavor balance, and when they got it just right, the entire pavilion was filled with golden light. Or maybe it was just the sunrise. Still, dramatic. You pause to sit on a ledge, just wide enough for two. Maybe someone once sat here, cradling a bundle of hot rice cakes in lotus leaves, sharing them with a friend or lover. Maybe they argued about which dipping sauce was better. Maybe they laughed. Maybe the rice cakes were a little burnt and they didn't care. This place, crumbled, quiet, fragrant in memory, isn't just about food. It's about what food meant: identity, ceremony, comfort, celebration, a way to turn ordinary ingredients, sticky, rice, grated coconut, palm sugar, into something transcendent, something that made people close their eyes, sigh and whisper, "Perfect." You rise, brushing off the imaginary dust. There's still more to see, more stories to unearth, more flavors lost to time, but not to your imagination. You step forward, the wind curling softly at your heels, carrying the last scent of jackfruit and history behind you. The path you follow now curves gently into a shaded grove, thick with imaginary foliage and low-hanging vines that brush your shoulders like curious hands. It's cooler here, the scent shifting, less sugary, more earthy. You smell tamarind, bark, dried leaves, the distant charcoal of cooking fires long gone out. It feels like you're stepping behind the scenes, into the prep zone, the back kitchen of the Khmer Empire, if you will. This area, archaeologists believe, wasn't for display or ceremony. This was where the raw work happened. Food wasn't just crafted here, it was conjured, layered, simmered, fermented, and, on occasion, slightly overcooked. Let's be honest, even in an empire, someone probably forgot to stir the pot once or twice. The ground is uneven with clusters of stoneware fragments, mortars, pestles, broken clay pots, each one a ghost of a recipe you'll never quite know. Some pots bear grooves, not decorative, but functional. Grinding lines, perhaps, where someone spent hours reducing wild ginger or crushing red ants into a savory paste. Yes, ants, high in protein. And when sautéed with lemongrass, a taste explosion, well, a very tiny one. Historians still argue whether these cooking groves were communal, with many families contributing to larger feasts, or whether they were assigned to specific temple staff. Some ruins suggest an organized system with labeled storage bins, etched with early Khmer script, denoting rice, herbs, pickled, and possibly do not touch. This is for the monks. You step over a narrow channel cut through the ground, part of a complex water system, not just irrigation. The Khmer, as you may know, were master water engineers. They channeled water for farming, bathing, and yes, food prep. These tiny aqueducts may have supplied outdoor kitchens with fresh water, filtered through layers of sand and gravel, honestly fancier than most food trucks today. A fringe theory holds that certain imperial dishes could only be prepared with water drawn from a living source, meaning a stream, not a stagnant pond. It was believed this gave dishes more energy, more spiritual alignment. Some cooks would even chant while ladling water, infusing the meal with blessings or very specific intentions, like warding off bad harvests, or helping that one nephew finally get married. You crouch near a slab of sun-warmed rock, imagining the hands that might have worked here. A cook squatting low, flipping patties made of ground taro and dried fish, pressing them flat with a piece of bamboo. Or someone stuffing rice flour dough with palm sugar and black beans, pinching it closed like a tiny dumpling, whispering a quick hope that it wouldn't burst during steaming. Nearby, a wide ceramic jar lies on its side, half buried. Fermentation. Vessel, most likely. The Khmer loved pickles, mango, papaya, tamarind, even unripe bananas, left to ferment in brine or honey-vinegar blends. The result? Sweet, sour, punchy bursts of flavor that balanced heavier dishes or served as quick snacks on long marches. That's right, snacks weren't just for temple feasts. Soldiers, messengers, even laborers got their own versions. Travel cakes, made from glutinous rice and roasted beans, wrapped in layers of tree bark. They were high-calorie, compact, and if you didn't eat them fast enough, they'd ferment on their own. Surprise! You pass a sunken pit, maybe once a root cellar, maybe just a cleverly disguised snack stash. Historians speculate that some temples had food storage systems capable of holding ingredients through dry seasons. And where there's storage, there's strategy. Seasonal preservation was an art form. Smoking fish with tamarind wood. Drying wild mushrooms into crispy, almost potato chip-like slivers. Candied citron peel sealed in clay jars. Honestly, if the Empire had a pantry podcast, it would have been wildly popular. Of course, not everything stored well. Certain treats had to be eaten fresh, like a thin crepe made from rice batter and riverweed, cooked over a hot stone, filled with mushrooms and a drizzle of fermented fish sauce. If that's not breakfast of champions, I don't know what is. You lean against a tall tree at the grove's edge. Its bark peels in long strips, and you imagine someone using it to wrap snacks, a natural container, biodegradable and subtly flavored. Sustainability, 10th century style. Suddenly, modern cling wrap feels very uncool. One more thing catches your eye, a cluster of carved stones arranged in a spiral. Unusual. Was it symbolic? Or maybe just a creative spice rack? A few fringe researchers think this could have been a ritual kitchen, where each station aligned with a specific celestial direction, infusing dishes with planetary energy. It sounds mystical until you remember people today believe in Mercury, retrograde and crystal-charged smoothies. So maybe not that fringe after all. You reach into your dream pocket and pull out an imaginary taste test. One sweet, one savory, one just plain weird. A coconut millet dumpling, a sliver of pickled fig, and a crispy beetle wing brushed with chili oil. You nibble all three, not bad, definitely crunchy, possibly cursed. All around you, the kitchen grove sighs with time. The trees stretch higher, the stone slabs grow mossy. The only movement now is the wind, carrying scent and memory, and the distant echo of laughter, the kind that follows a recipe gone hilariously wrong. You take one last look before moving on. These were the hands behind the feast, the cooks, the grinders, the foragers, people whose names are lost, but whose flavors somehow still whisper across centuries. They were never famous, never crowned. But in this grove they were alchemists, turning leaf and root into joy. You step out of the grove, the sun returning to your face. The forest thins, and ahead something glimmers. Not gold, not jewels, but something even rarer. A forgotten dessert. You keep walking. One snack closer to history's sweetest mysteries. You're now following the scent of something you didn't know you missed. A dessert from 1,000 years ago, never photographed, never hashtagged, and almost certainly never plated in a cute leaf boat with edible orchids. Yet somehow it feels close, like it's just ahead of you in the tall grass. This part of the ancient city has shifted. Fewer stones, more soil. The land here was used differently. Archaeologists believe this was where temple workers and market vendors lived, along the outer skirt of the Angkorian sprawl, which, let's be honest, is kind of the historical equivalent of the good neighborhood just outside downtown. Less traffic, better airflow, and occasionally access to illicit snacks. You pass remnants of fire pits and crumbly clay ovens, smaller, more personal than the ceremonial kitchens back in Section 8. These were for everyday people, and that's where the story gets tasty, because this is where you find the lost snacks, the off-the-record creations that rarely made it onto temple walls or into royal archives, but absolutely made it into someone's palm on a lazy afternoon. One such snack, a sweet, sticky rice ball filled with palm sugar and sesame, boiled in coconut milk until the center melted like warm syrup. Imagine biting in and boom, sugar bomb, sticky fingers guaranteed. Kids probably burned their tongues on it just like kids everywhere. Historians still debate whether this treat was strictly homemade or sometimes sold in small markets. A few 12th century inscriptions reference a dish called num ban chong, which might be an early ancestor of today's Cambodian dessert dumplings. Or it could have just been someone bragging about their mum's cooking. Hard to say. You pause at a cluster of circular indentations carved into stone, almost like muffin molds. Except Khmer style. Some experts think these were used to make crispy rice cakes, flattened and baked using hot coals on both sides. What went in them? Probably rice flour, grated coconut, maybe slivers of jackfruit. And yes, there might have been a salty twist. Because the Khmer loved contrast, sweet and sour, chewy and crisp, heat and coolness, their food had layers like actual emotional complexity. Your favorite rom-com could never. You spot a narrow trench lined with pebbles, once part of a bamboo steaming system. It's believed these early steam tunnels allowed multiple dishes to cook at once, sealed in banana leaves and stacked above each other in leaf-woven baskets. Among them, a legendary dessert called chek chueng, plantains marinated in sugar, then slow steamed until the fruit turned deep red and silky soft. Here's where it gets weird. Some versions added dried shrimp, because why not? Salty, sweet, mushy, chewy, every bite a surprise party for your taste buds. You might not love it, but you definitely remember it, like a jelly bean that punches back. A few feet away, a small mound of charred earth marks what may have been a neighborhood hearth. Surrounding it are crushed bits of green-glazed pottery, unusual for everyday use. Historians speculate this could have been a sweets vendor's stall. Think of it. After prayers, after planting rice, after doing whatever you did in the 11th century to feel productive, you stop by for a crunchy honey cracker dusted in toasted rice powder and maybe a kiss
of tamarind glaze. And let's not forget the jellies.
Yes, they had them. Made from agar pulled from river algae mixed with fruit pulp, then set into leaf-shaped molds. Natural, biodegradable gummy bears, no sugar coating, just authenticity, and maybe a few ants if you didn't eat fast enough. 1. Tablet fragment recovered. Here mentions a strange dessert called sramai, possibly a frozen treat made by storing coconut cream in ceramic jars lowered into deep wells overnight. Ice cream? Maybe, kind of. But given the tropical heat, it probably lasted 12 seconds before becoming coconut soup. Still, 12 glorious seconds. A fringe theory, mostly ignored by mainstream archaeologists but beloved by food nerds, claims that certain dessert recipes were passed down only through women's oral tradition, never written. These were grandmother-coded, secrets based on smell, instinct, and years of sticky practice, the sort of thing where your fingers learn the technique before your brain does, which might explain why we'll never fully recreate them. There's no recipe for intuition. You come to a row of stumpy columns, foundations for market stalls long decayed. One was likely a dedicated sweets cart. Imagine a wooden tray filled with candied lotus seeds, sticky taro cubes, and slices of sun-dried watermelon rind dipped in honey. You'd grab a bundle, wrapped in banana leaf, tuck it under your arm, and walk off chewing. That's the kind of comfort food even modern delivery apps can't compete with. One final treat reveals itself as you pass a wall lined with decorative shell inlays. A local legend carved nearby references a golden cake served once each moon cycle, a dish reserved for full moon festivals. It involved rice flour, coconut, duck egg yolk, and a rare flower syrup extracted from blue orchids. The dish shimmered, gold when fresh. Sound excessive? Maybe. But if you've ever had birthday cake with glitter icing, you've got no room to judge. By now, the air grows thicker again, heavier, with scent, memory, and heat. Your sandals stick slightly to the imaginary rice syrup beneath your feet. You feel it all over your senses, the sugar-crusted fingers, the soft steam wafting from banana leaf wraps, the distant hum of children giggling as they argue over who gets the last dumpling. You're not just walking through ruins anymore. You're wandering a lost bakery of the Khmer Empire, built not for kings but for kids, monks, mothers, and that one neighbor who always brought snacks to every social occasion. One last morsel glints at the edge of your path. A syrup-stained shell, maybe once used as a scoop, or maybe just something that caught sweet runoff during dessert prep. You pick it up, press it to your nose, and imagine the faintest whiff of burnt sugar and rice flour, the kind of smell that stays in your dreams long after history has let go. The ground becomes softer as you step farther from the ancient kitchens. The sharp clink of broken pottery has faded behind you, replaced now by the quiet crunch of moss and fallen palm fronds. You're entering the farming zones, where the snacks you just imagined began their lives long before sugar was sugar and coconuts were coconut milk. This isn't the glamorous part of history. It's not golden or carved or buried in treasure, but it is deeply alive. You wade through overgrown dikes and scattered irrigation stones, tracing the long-forgotten footsteps of Khmer farmers, ordinary barefoot laborers whose hands coaxed sweetness from swampy soil, hands that pulled sticky rice from paddies, hands that husked coconuts by the dozens, hands that knew exactly when a stalk of sugarcane had reached peak chewability. Every treat has a backstory, and this is it. The rice wasn't just any rice, it was Beaker Rumdul, a fragrant heirloom variety that still grows in Cambodia today, though good luck finding it in your supermarket. This rice had flavor, memory, and personality. It clung to your tongue. It didn't just feed you, it flirted with you. Fringe theories suggest the Khmer may have used fermentation techniques with their rice, possibly even developing early rice wine as a byproduct of sweet dessert pastes. Some archaeologists whisper about ceremonial fermented pudding, offered to spirits during the monsoon season to ensure good crops and fewer angry ghost tantrums, because nothing ruins a harvest like an irritated ancestral spirit. Ask anyone. You. Step into what was once a coconut grove, or at least a rough approximation of one. Trees are gone, of course, but the soil knows. It smells faintly acidic, earthy with an undertone of old sweetness. You can almost hear the rustle of palms overhead, the thunk of coconuts dropping to the ground like sleepy comets. Coconut wasn't just a garnish in Khmer cuisine. It was everything: fat, texture, sweetness, scent. Coconut milk turned dry rice into velvet. Grated coconut added crunch. Coconut sugar? That's Khmer caramel, baby. Soft, floral, smoky, not the straight-in-your-face sweetness of white sugar, but something more seductive. Less birthday cake, more deep sigh after a long day. You crouch by a dried-up channel, once part of an elaborate irrigation system called Beret, which funneled monsoon waters to rice fields across Angkor. These weren't just ditches, they were engineering flexes showing that even snacks relied on state-sponsored hydrology, which, let's be honest, is kind of amazing. You've heard of trickle-down economics, but have you heard of trickle-down desserts? Now a pile of half-buried shells catches your eye, shards of mollusk and snail, oddly arranged, not dessert exactly, but part of the story. Salt was harvested here too, boiled down from brackish water or traded inland. A rare and precious commodity, it added the critical balance that Khmer snacks were famous for: salted palm sugar toffee, coconut sesame brittle with sea salt flakes, even jelly-like desserts with a thin, salty edge to keep things from turning cloying. Historians still argue whether this salty, sweet obsession was influenced by trade with Indian or Javanese merchants. Some say it was a local development, others see signs of culinary cross-pollination. All agree, however, that Khmer taste buds were not playing around. These people wanted drama in their desserts, a little chaos, a little plot twist just beyond. The salted shell mound. You step onto what looks like a sunken patio, rows of large, flat stones arranged in a grid, likely a drying field. Palm fruit, bananas, jackfruit, even young rice would have been laid out here in the sun to dry and concentrate. This wasn't fast food. It was slow, intentional, and kind of dangerous. Anything left out too long invited ants, mold, or curious monkeys. You had to stay nearby, or at the very least, assign a niece with a stick. You spot a row of post holes. Once, the foundation of a food storage shed. Inside, there might have been woven baskets lined with leaves to preserve dried sweets. Imagine opening one and finding a leathery strip of jackfruit rolled with palm sugar, chewy, tangy, smoky sweet. Travel snacks for long ox cart journeys or offerings placed quietly at ancestor shrines. Speaking of shrines, every now and then, you'll stumble across a tiny platform with incense-burnt stone. These weren't temples, but home altars. And, yes, even they received their share of treats. Sticky rice cakes wrapped in banana leaves, little pyramids of puffed rice bound with honey, all offered in thanks or in apology, depending on how harvest season was going. Here comes a weird one. Some oral traditions speak of invisible sugar. It's not literal, of course, but refers to desserts that weren't sweetened by adding sugar, but by slowly cooking ingredients until their natural sugars emerged. Think boiled pumpkin, long-simmered taro, or caramelized rice powder. This invisible sugar was seen as purer, less indulgent, more spiritually balanced. A monk-approved dessert, possibly gluten-free. Now your feet crunch across a stretch of sandy grit, coarse and red, almost like paprika. It's laterite, the iron-rich stone that builds so much of Angkor's temples. But here, it formed the walking paths between fields and kitchens, which means hundreds, maybe thousands of feet once followed the same route you are now, carrying buckets of water, baskets of mangoes, trays of sticky rice, and probably a healthy amount of gossip. There's something comforting about that, knowing snacks were shared, stolen, swapped, and saved across generations. A mango cut 3 ways, a dumpling eaten in hiding, a rice cake slid across a mat with a wink. One small mound of disturbed earth makes you pause. It's the kind of subtle elevation archaeologists obsess over. You imagine them troweling carefully, whispering over bits of charcoal and rice hulls, trying to decide, was this a family's dessert oven, a vendor's hot stone griddle, a grandmother's secret recipe pit? You'll never know, but your mouth waters anyway.